Hey, welcome to Optimize Your Body with Martin Silva, where we talk raw, uncut facts to truly help you optimize your body.
Hey guys, before we get this podcast rolling, I would like to let you know that I have some slots available for my online coaching packages, whether your goal is just to get in shape or if you were looking to get on stage and compete, as a bikini model or physique athlete, bodybuilder. Please reach out and give me an email at admin@optimizeyourbody.com. So send an email to admin@optimizeyourbody.com. Also, to go get your free recipe ebooks and your free training plan, just head over to my current website, martin-silva.co.uk, martin-silva.co.uk, and all you have to do is enter your email address into the pop-up box to receive. Enjoy.
Dude, you're up early today, man. It's 7 a.m. over there.
It is. It's 7 a.m. here, mate. Yeah, it's 7:15. Had a couple of clients this morning, 5 a.m.
Nice and early, mate. Nice and early.
Nice and early, mate. It must be late for you, man. I don't know how you function at that time. I'm probably falling asleep by 10:15.
I only get started. I only get started around this time. But to be fair, I mean, if I was in Australia, I think I would be awake all hours of the day. Whereabouts are you based? It's Sydney, is it?
Sydney, mate. Yeah. Have you ever been here?
I was there in October. It's good. Got it. How long have you been there?
I've been here now for over 2 years.
Oh, mate. Next time I'm out there, I'll hit you up and we'll get a session in. What part are you in?
I'm in Coogee, so the eastern suburbs.
Awesome. Yeah, dude, we'll definitely get a session in. 100%.
Come to the gym in Coogee. Yeah, we'll catch up for sure.
So you've been busy. You've got your kind of. I think, did you say you have a few weeks left before you start cutting for your show?
Yeah, that's a good question because I've got around about just under 17 weeks left, but I am going to kind of have a little experiment now and do like this week, I think I'll bring my calories down. So I've been, just for the listeners, I've been bulking for the best part of the year, really. So I've been trying to gain muscle, and I don't know about you, Chris, but for me, it's a full-time job and project actually building muscle nowadays because
I've been trying to do it for years and I'm struggling. It's funny because I saw for those of you guys who aren't following Martin, you put a post up and you were like, "Oh no, I'm way too lean here. I need to increase my calories." Not so long ago. So, dude, that's a great place to be.
I know people are probably watching that. Sorry, mate. Go on.
No, I was saying that's a good place to be.
Definitely. It's a great problem to have, mate. I bet people watch that and think, look at this idiot, like it's normal that the people want to get lean. And so for me, I've been lifting weights for a long time now, for about 16, 17 years. So much like yourself, mate, I've got a lot of lean body mass. And as you probably, I know you get some great information out of this. You probably have already explained to the listeners the science behind, building muscle. 1 pound of muscle will burn, give or take 30 to 50 calories just to keep that muscle on your body. So I've got, probably there at about 75 to 80 kilos of lean body mass now, roughly. So, my body, just to keep, my maintenance calories are over 4,000 calories now. So
yeah,
it's a lot of calories.
You're doing quite a lot of walking as well. You're kind of just sitting around 15,000 steps. And is that just on a day-to-day basis?
Yeah. So I average around about 12,000. Yeah. So that's with, not having to schedule that in. So as you said, mate, my daily activity is through the roof. Yeah.
Yeah, that's mental, dude. That's mental. And I think, the one thing that really kind of resonated, with me when I was, going through your more recent posts is just how difficult it is to put on muscle. Obviously you've been doing this for a long time. I think we just kind of we just mentioned before the podcast off air. Martin didn't know I was actually at his show in 2015 in May. His first show. Yeah. That was your first show, right?
It was my first WBFF show. Yeah, I'd done 5 shows prior to that.
What did you do before that?
I'd done men's physique before that, Chris, with UKBF. Awesome. Yeah.
Yeah, that's awesome. And obviously, I mean, over the space of, I suppose, from 2015 to now, how have you found, obviously putting on muscle is it's a struggle, right?
That's right, mate. Yeah. So So it was a lot easier when I switched the way I trained. So as you know, Chris, training programming I only actually started valuing how important training programming and training properly. Essentially, you want to be doing, for the audience, you want to be doing the minimum amount of work to elicit the maximum amount of change, right? And that's a concept which I never really grasped before, because I was always doing split body part and hammering each body part, once a week. So one day I would do chest, one day back, one day legs. And this is very common. A lot of people still do this. And split body part training is actually very effective if done properly. But if you ask me, doing one body part each session, so you're just hitting, the body parts once in a week, isn't the right way to go about it. So when I switched over to doing the full body, which was actually probably around about early 2016, I switched over because I started learning more about training frequency and recovery. So, just to simplify it, as you know, Chris, training frequency is the amount of training you're doing. So how often are you hitting each body part, for example? And when I switched that up and I started hitting my body parts more frequently, I began to build muscle a lot faster. But yeah, to your question, to your point, it's still a battle, right? Because as I said previously, I've built a lot of lean body mass now. So that is why resistance training is the most beneficial thing for body composition, losing body fat, and keeping it off long term. Because I always explain to people, it's muscle tissue is expensive. It costs your body a lot of calories to keep that on, right?
Yeah,
it's like money. It costs your body a lot of calories.
I think as well, like, the one thing that you touched on there is just frequency of training. And obviously, when we all get into the gym, we're all on that bro split, like arms and then shoulders and legs and chest. And like you said, that's all well and good. But like, that means obviously if you're training chest once a week and you want to grow your chest, your body has only 50 opportunities to grow in a year, right? Like you're training it once a week. It's only got 51, 52 opportunities to grow. As Martin said, if you increase your frequency 2, maybe 3 times a week, you've doubled or tripled your opportunity for growth. And sometimes people say, "Oh, is that overtraining?" I personally don't think there's such thing as overtraining. I think it's just under recovering. And for someone at your level, obviously, to be competing at that level. And with your nutrition the way it is, you're ensuring that you're recovering is as well as you possibly can, and it's sufficient. So I think that's such a good point. How have you found, I suppose, with this prep now going into it, what are you going to be focusing on most? Or probably even more awkward but better question, what are you going to be focusing on most this prep that you've never done before, or that you're focusing on most?
Great question. So I'm not sure if you know, but I'm a lifetime natural, right? So I've never actually taken any performance enhancing supplements, if you like. And obviously I compete in a non-tested federation. Now, I'm not one to complain about that. Some people complain about, well, no, because you choose to enter these federations, right? So fortunately for me, like as I said, I've been lifting weights for so long now, probably 16, 17, 18 years. So I can, and obviously genetics play a part in it. But for the most part, I really look after myself. Health is my number one priority now. So I can still compete against people who are not natural at a top level. So I place within the top 10 in the world at the World Championships in Toronto in 2016. So this time round, to your points, I am really, really focusing on retaining as much muscle as possible. And tuning up on the day and bringing my best package as far as muscle fullness, because getting shredded for me is actually the easy part, Chris. So the funny thing is now, I was saying to someone recently, it's actually going to be easier for me now to cut. It's actually going to be really straightforward for me to get lean. The bulking has been the hard part. So mainly my main focus this time around with the prep, the things I'm going to be doing differently is I'm going to actually do probably a shorter cut this time. So last time round, I was actually really, really lean, like 12 weeks out, which is a good thing, because then it makes the prep a lot smoother and easier. But I think this time round, I'm going to do a little bit of a shorter cut and try and retain as much muscle as possible. Now, when I say shorter cut, I haven't fully clarified that in my head yet, because I'm going to be doing a little bit so I've got like 16 weeks now until I compete. So I'm going to do like a little experiment now over the next few weeks, bring my calories down a bit, see how I respond. So, but yeah, and what I need to really get right this time around, Chris, actually, which is much more important than what I just talked about, is actually bringing the best package on the day. So my last competition in 2016 in Toronto, at the World Championships, I got a lot of things wrong on the day, which really hurt, because the show before that, I was actually, I looked better on stage. So everything from my tan, my spray tan, to muscle fullness wasn't quite as dry either. And my posing, I used a different coach this time. And I'm not going to point the finger at the coach. It's obviously, I'm accountable, but I didn't quite get my posing right on stage either. So all of those things, Chris, as you know, at that level, that can knock you right down. But, I still got within the top 10. So it'll be interesting if I get all of those things right this time round, see how we get on, really.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, just for those out there, in terms of maybe your last few days, without throwing anyone under the bus, because I actually don't know who it is. Either way, was it a case of kind of maybe water manipulation, carb up, or what aspect of your prep leading up to that did you feel could have been better, and what have you learned from that?
Okay, so what I have learned is actually in terms of the fullness I was talking about, so muscle fullness is actually important, especially at the pro level. So I didn't actually, this time round, I'm going to be doing more of a carb load and manipulating my sodium a bit more. And actually, so for the listeners, obviously, sodium actually can help with muscle fullness on stage, just to simplify, because it retains water within the muscle bellies. Mm-hmm. So it is important for you to have a decent amount of water within the muscles, right? So I'm going to be, this time round, I'll be having more, like I said, more carbohydrates and loading more, because I know I could get away with more than what I had last time. So peak week, we call it. So the week before the show is when you kind of, all you're going to be doing that week is you're not going to be getting any leaner. All you're going to be doing, as Chris said, is kind of getting it right with your sodium, water, and carbohydrates. So all that dictates really on stage, those three things, so sodium, carbohydrates, water, is how full your muscle bellies look, which I said is very important for obvious reasons, for proportion, for muscular proportion and symmetry. Not so much symmetry, sorry, more muscular proportion and having a nice full physique to add to the aesthetics, because obviously your waist is going to be really tight and small because you're going to be shredded. And also then as I said, the water, carbs, and sodium is going to dictate how dry you are on stage, as us kind of, that's what we call it in the bodybuilding world, if you like, dry. So essentially you want to be pretty dehydrated on stage. So I think what I need to do is come in a little bit drier. So what I'll do there is I will actually, I'm still working that out, to be honest, what I'm going to do with the water, but I'm not going to do anything too crazy really this time. I might have, there's a few things I'll do there, but without going too much into detail, it's more a case of having more carbohydrates and doing something a little bit different with my water. I think having a little bit more of a water load, so having water lean on peak week, and with the carbohydrates, not the carbohydrates, with the sodium, I'm going to manipulate that a little bit. Like say 4 to 6 weeks out, I'm going to play around and see how my body responds in terms of the muscle fullness, with the sodium. So, yeah.
Amazing. That's something that I've not really played around with as much as I should have. What I have noticed when I'm growing, or I'm trying to get a lot of food in, I find that especially in terms of, that pump in the gym, or that fullness in the muscle, that aids performance and strength, I've noticed a massive difference. But when I've been that lean, I've not actually manipulated sodium. So that's definitely something that I'm going to make a note of. And it's something that it's kind of been on my mind for quite a while, but I haven't experimented with it enough to really feel or see how my body reacts. So I'm going to be interested to. So how many weeks now? Did you say it was 14 or 15?
It's like just under 17 weeks now.
Oh, dude, you've loads of time. You've loads of time. You've loads of time. Yeah, you've loads of time.
That's exactly right. I've got 4 weeks now, a solid 4 weeks where I'm still looking to build a bit more muscle.
Yeah.
So I might just do this week because I've like I said to you, I've been bulking for a while. Literally this week, I'm gonna just go into a bit of a deficit, I think, and see how my body responds. So
awesome. Which show is it, by the way?
So it is it's the Australian Championships. So it's a pretty big one here. Yeah. So it's up in the Gold Coast. Yeah, in Australia.
Oh, so. Awesome. I had Alicia Gowans on the podcast not so long ago. So she's down that neck of the woods. She's going for her third world championship title in the Bahamas. So she'll have a lot of females competing in that Australian show. Obviously, she's based down there. But yeah, dude, that's going to be interesting to see how you get on. Obviously, you're well prepared and plenty of time. One thing I did want to chat to you about was your transition from rugby into fitness, or your transition from, I suppose, what all of us in fitness discuss as our old life and our new life. How has your mentality changed since, getting into fitness? And is it more from a physiological appearance, feeling better, physically, or is it just kind of a mental thing and it's a kind of a form of therapy that really got you into the gym in the first place?
Yeah, so I've actually been a personal trainer now for around about 12 years. So I've had my foot in the door, so to speak, within the fitness world for a long time now. And I've trained hundreds and hundreds of people from all walks of life, from athletes to the older population. So I've got a lot of experience within that realm, and yeah, so I've always been competitive. So I played rugby from quite a young age, and all sorts of sports really. And I stopped playing rugby when I was about 25, so about 6 years ago, something like that. And coming from always playing sports and always having that kind of competitive nature, if you like, ingrained into me, I heard about the men's physique competitions. So I heard that it was a new category of bodybuilding, if you like, and I had never really considered doing bodybuilding. It was not really. I was never really a guy to like look too much into the magazines, and I always was a big fan of Arnie, but other than that, I wasn't really a big bodybuilding fan or anything. But anyway, one of the guys that in the gym I was working, and he was like, "Oh, he told me about this new competition." He said, "You should give it a go." He said, they're kind of going for, just the men's health kind of, cover model kind of look. So you can relate to that, Chris. Yeah, I saw you've done some cover stuff there, mate.
Just a few, yeah, just a few. Yeah, it's funny though, because obviously my journey into fitness was quite different, right? Like I've not competed yet. I toyed with the idea of competing, and probably will compete, and I probably will be WBFF at some point. Although I'm pushing on. I'm going to be 30 this year.
You're good. I'm 31, so you're good, man.
I've got time. But yeah, so obviously my my journey into fitness, I suppose, was when I moved over to London to do my doctorate. My PhD was in leukemia, was in cancer research. Moved over here, didn't know a single person in a city of 9 million people, and I just joined the gym. And I happened to join, a pretty big bodybuilding kind of fitness orientated gym when I was here, and everyone was doing bodybuilding shows, getting in shape and doing shoots. And I was like, I reckon I can cut down. Obviously, I was still am small, but I was a lot smaller back then. But I knew I could get lean. So I decided to cut down.
When did you start lifting, Chris?
Well, so like yourself, my background was a rugby background. I played semi-professional, got scholarship to university, and always had this chip on my shoulder of being the smallest guy on the pitch. So I spent more time in the weight room than anyone else. So I didn't grow, but I was extremely strong for my size. And and that was kind of how I got into the gym from that standpoint. And then obviously when I moved to the States for a while, just before I did my master's, and then left rugby by the wayside and just continued to train really. To be honest, I think I only really cut for the first time maybe in 2014. So probably a year before your first WBFF show, and I cut for the first time. Did a few shoots. They went pretty viral. Got contacted by a few agents and ended up getting on the cover of a few magazines. And then got which was a dream feature in Men's Health. And it just kind of went from there, to be honest, dude. Obviously it's been a very different route, but
it's good though, because what you've learned from applying yourself. It's not, it's a little bit different to when you're doing a show, but when you're doing photo shoots, it's not far behind really. If you want to, obviously with the cover model stuff, they go for a particular, certain magazines don't like you to be too shredded, but you've still got to come in, lean and manipulate a few things leading up to it. And, because I've done a lot of photo shoots myself, what fitness modeling stuff and whatnot. And yeah, I just wanted to, I'll talk a bit about that later down the line, because I don't know about yourself, Chris, but for me, the amount of photo shoots, because I've done, all in all, I've done 8 competitions now and quite a lot of different photo shoots, which I've dieted down for and stuff. So for me, it gave me a really bad relationship with food. So I was, obviously, as you know, with the restricting side of it, and I'm not sure about yourself, but my knowledge wasn't anywhere near, like not even a fraction of what it is now when I was competing and doing these photo shoots. So all I knew, I was getting advice from bodybuilders, like old school bodybuilders who don't know anything about the science, essentially. They just cookie cutter, dangerous, restricted plans. And it just gave me, it triggered the binge eating disorder personally, mate. So maybe we could talk a bit more about that, but I'm not sure how you manage with your cutting and stuff.
Yeah, I think, well, back then, I think I just, being completely truthful, dude, I actually used to intermittent fast a lot. And now that was nothing to do with wanting to get lean. And that was nothing to do with wanting to drop calories. It was because I found that when I was, for those who aren't aware, during my PhD, obviously it was, I was studying a form of leukemia called AML, or acute myeloid leukemia. And my research was actually looking into a specific set of genes that was, or we assumed or thought that they were responsible for some patients developing this type of leukemia, or some pre-leukemic diseases that people get on the way to leukemia. And a lot of these people had a higher level or a higher expression level of these genes. And for me to do my analysis, I was spending hours and hours and hours in the lab and the clinic, getting loads of blood samples and analyzing. And I actually found that I was a lot sharper and a better cognitive function when I was lower on food. So I actually used to go, I'd wake up. I was always quite active on my train in the morning. I would say, when I say train, it would be maybe more kind of metabolic work. And then I would spend maybe a few hours, have a coffee, maybe around 10 a.m. Still wouldn't have a meal. I'd probably have my first meal at around 1 or 2 maybe. And I found that I was able to get the majority of my lab work done. My brain function was perfect. I felt I was like on point. And then I just used to backload my carbs for my evening training session. Now,
let me ask you what food you're eating then, though, Chris. Sorry to intervene, but because that's the important thing, Chris, right? Because I never promote fasting to the majority, 90% of people, if you ask me, have no place really focusing on fasting, because building that healthy relationship with food and eating whole foods for the most part is the absolute game changer. It's the most important thing, because if people, I'm glad you mentioned at the start as well that, it's when people use intermittent fasting, or any form of fasting for that matter, to lose weight or to get leaner, I think is a dumb idea. Because don't get me wrong, if you're eating healthy foods, it gives you a shorter window to eat those foods. And as you said, you can get leaner. Like, it's easy, because I do intermittent fasting myself, so it's much easier to get leaner because you've got a shorter window to eat. And as you said, you feel, for me and for I find guys respond a lot better to it. But for me and for a lot of people I've coached, who have got to a decent level, cognitively, energy wise, and all of these things, you function much, much better. But So
Definitely.
I was just going to ask,
No,
were you
yeah. So just to touch on that point, I feel like you're right, and I would suggest that people, if you are going to fast or do intermittent fasting, I would suggest or urge you to do it for other reasons purely than just to decrease your feeding window, because like you said, it can develop a negative relationship with food. Now,
Yeah.
I was coming at it from a positive perspective of mental clarity and mental focus, and by default, I got lean. So to answer your question, when I was going to break my fast, now obviously when you fast for longer periods of time, you become more insulin sensitive. So therefore, it would make sense that first of all, becoming more insulin sensitive, your body then utilizes carbohydrates better when you have them. So for that reason, I would structure the majority of my carbohydrates in the evening around my workout, when I was even more insulin sensitive after resistance training. Now, as you can imagine, for those out there, if you put you in an exaggerated scenario, imagine you haven't eaten for a long time, and then all of a sudden you have a rush of sugar. Now you're going to get a massive insulin spike and then an immediate drop off. So for that reason, it is a better idea to break those intermittent fasts with a protein and fat meal, so that you delay that that massive insulin spike, and you actually utilize that insulin spike or insulin sensitivity for when you're training. So I would have normally had a protein fat meal. It could have been maybe steak and eggs and bacon, something along those lines, dude. And then I would have maybe just kind of snacked on nuts, beef jerky, maybe some chicken and greens in the evening. I might have had a coffee and some nuts pre-workout, maybe some coconut oil, purely just for some MCT oil that obviously crosses the blood-brain barrier. I would have trained, and then I would have kind of backloaded all my carbohydrates. And it worked really, really well to get a cover model shape by default. And I was then able to integrate that sort of structure or kind of idea with a lot of my clients. However, I'm not kind of married to any approach. A lot of my clients want carbs first thing in the morning, and that's fine. They get carbs first thing in the morning. The one thing that I'll say to anyone, and it's so true, to be a good coach, I think you need to ensure that the client doesn't even realize they're on your program. They just feel like you're now on theirs. And I think that's a really, really important thing in terms of building that client coach relationship. Coming back to I suppose having a negative relationship with food, because you mentioned it, and it's something that's come up a few times with the last few guests that we've had on my podcast, is that they've had a negative relationship with food. How did that develop, and how have you combated that? Or what advice would you give to guys in particular? And the reason I say that is because when people say eating disorders, they think of teenage girls. And that's so stereotypical, because there are so many of us guys out there that have eating disorders or have had or have a poor relationship with food. What advice would you give to guys out there going through that similar situation right now?
Yeah, so around about 50% here in Australia, around about 50% of all eating disorders, whether that's bulimia, anorexia, all come under the binge eating disorder. So around 50% of all eating disorders here in Australia, and I'm sure it's not that different over in the UK and US. What I'm trying to say is it's very, very common. So a lot of people, especially guys actually binge eat quite regular, but don't realize that actually this is a little bit of a disorder. And as you say, when you say disorder, there's probably worse eating disorders to have for sure, but it's still a bad place to be, because it's very, very tough to actually get connected and get in tune with the signals that we were actually born with, which is eating intuitively, eating based on what your body needs and nourishing your body, as opposed to eating purely for mouth pleasure, if you like, which I like. Don't get me wrong, I still like to eat food for the taste, obviously, but what happens is as you start eating more whole foods, and what I mean by whole foods is any food which is not processed and, you know, which is grown or, you know, coming from good animal sources and whatnot. So when you're eating these whole foods, for the most part, you actually start not craving, so to speak, these other foods. But how it all started for me was I was eating, well, I thought I was eating quite healthy leading up to when I first competed, which was back in, I think, 2013. I was eating relatively healthy foods at that point. To be fair, I'd actually increased the amount of vegetables I was eating. I was eating better quality sources of meat and more of a varied diet. But yeah, so leading up to my first show, all good. I didn't really know what I was doing. I literally just jumped on stage. I had no idea what I was doing, and I came second and qualified for the UK finals. And then when I did this men's physique British finals, like I said, I actually hired a bodybuilder to help me with the prep for it in terms of the food, and that's when it kind of started then, because it was very restrictive. I was eating probably, I don't know, eight or nine different types of foods, primarily like sweet potato. I was having a little bit of sweet potato, but it was mainly like, you know, I was having walnuts, tuna, you know, typical chicken, asparagus, broccoli, maybe one or two other things, and that was pretty much all I ate for about, I think it was about 6 weeks.
Right.
And it was nothing. Yeah, and that's when it kind of started then, because I competed. I didn't actually place in that show. And leading up to this is when I started realizing, well, actually looking back, I didn't realize at the time, I was actually making a list of, you know, the kind of foods I wanted to eat and whatnot once I got off stage. So I bought all this crap food, you name it, cakes, cookies, everything. And my mate came and watched me at the show. The second I got off stage, that's when the first real binge started. And that, to this day, my friend and I, within this, it must have been about 36 hours or something, we put away probably over 20,000 calories each of just absolute garbage. And that's then when I realized, okay, so this can't be too good. But then what I was doing then is all I knew in between shows was to eat the bodybuilding diet, so to speak. That's all I thought, right, okay, this is healthy. You know, I'm eating some vegetables, although it was probably just two different vegetables, broccoli and asparagus. And then, and then I genuinely thought, Chris, I was being healthy. And then when we get to the weekends, I would obviously, what I like to call now is symptom eruption. I would get to like a Friday, Saturday and have one bad meal, and then the whole weekend would turn into a binge. But just to cut a long story short, when I got towards the end of this issue, I just started eating more vegetables and started educating myself on you know, that we don't need to eat. We don't need to eat a meal every 2 to 3 hours, like I was brainwashed into thinking when I was doing bodybuilding. You don't have to eat little and often. And in fact, it doesn't matter too much. You're kind of splitting hairs. I've had a few people message me lately saying, oh, well, you can only absorb a certain amount of protein per meal. And it's like, well, there's some studies to show that, but that's the bottom of the list. You know, as you know, the most important thing is, I would say, you know, nutrients, eating whole foods, right, and nourishing your body, but the energy balance, the actual total calories you're having and total protein intake is the most important thing. So, yeah, once I realized that actually most of these things are complete myths, we don't have to eat every couple of hours. Because, Chris, I used to literally think that if I would skip a meal, muscle would fall off my body. That's genuinely what I thought.
I know, and the thing is this, dude. I think when you're naturally an ectomorph, obviously, you know, you're a lot bigger than me, but when we struggle to put on muscle, that is just the constant struggle in your head of like, you know, and I use this term, you know, in the nicest sense of the word, but you know, it's like the opposite to fat kid syndrome. You know, when you have, I've got plenty of clients who used to be quite chubby as a kid and they get in great shape and they still feel like they're that chubby kid all of the time and they have that poor relationship with food. It's no different to us the other way around. That's exactly. We always feel small. Yeah, of course, it's a form of body dysmorphia to some degree. I feel like as we grow older and become educated and become more mindful, obviously we step outside of that and we become more present. But yeah, absolutely, dude, I know what it's like. It's like, you know, you go a few hours without eating and you think, oh my God, I'm shrinking. Oh my God, I'm shrinking. Oh my God, I'm shrinking. And then, especially when you're dieting, because you feel depleted, you feel flat, like you said, you're low on salt. And then all of a sudden you go into the gym, you get a pump and you look insane. Then 45 minutes later, you think you're tiny again. So it's one of those.
It's bigger, you know, they call it, don't they? Bigorexia. There's actually a name for it now.
Absolutely. So, talk to me about. Obviously, you've been out there for 2 years.
Yeah.
How are things out in Sydney? What's the plan? What are you doing? PT, online coaching. Where do you spend most of your time?
Yeah, so actually, when I came out here, I just firstly, the reason I came out here was because obviously a change in lifestyle and the weather helps, but there's a lot, there's a lot of opportunity here. Also, I've got a few friends here from back home, so I thought, I'll give it a go because cut a long story short, I came out here for the opportunity and a change in lifestyle. It was something that I'd had at the back of my mind all through my 20s, and then when I got to like 29, I thought, right, I'll miss the boat now if I don't do it. So came out here, and I came out here to actually pursue more of the modeling stuff. So, fitness and also commercial modeling. And what I had started doing a little bit of in the UK before I came out here was a little bit of acting stuff. So initially my goal was to come out here and let me just talk about the personal training. That's always been kind of my, my bread and butter, if you like. That's, like I said, I've been doing that for about 12 years now. So I had a gym lined up. So I was going to come out here as a self-employed trainer as well and build a business here in Coogee where I live, which I did. And I'm still actually doing the personal training now. Mm-hmm. But the modeling stuff, I done a few bits and bobs of that. But in reality, I just realized when I got here, I learned a lot about myself, by the way, moving to the other side of the world. And I realized that actually, like, this is my expertise. This is what I love, fitness. So how can I reach more people, Chris? Much like yourself, it's like, how can I reach more people? So that's when I started the podcast. And, so out here. And also I actually got into doing public speaking as well. That was something which I wanted to delve a bit more into. So I haven't done one for a while, but I was doing like my own kind of presentation to different corporate businesses across Sydney and teaching people essentially how to get in shape and, teaching people to make health a priority, because that's my message now. Because as I mentioned then, I managed to switch my mindset into focusing really on health and focusing on the important, markers, if you like how am I performing in the gym? How is my energy levels? How's my sleep? When I started tuning into these things, that's when aesthetically my physique started improving, because I was in a healthier state. And then I was educating myself more on the training programming as I alliterated earlier. So yeah, just to your points, I came out here to pursue more of the modeling and acting stuff, but then I actually realized, you know what, it's not something I'm really passionate about doing. So I'm going to continue on my path with fitness and really try and expand and grow some form of online presence, which I already had, but I wasn't getting great content out there, Chris, which is something I changed. So.
Yeah, it's key, and I think for me, what really took off for me was, even when I was getting on the cover of magazines and Men's Health, and, I was on a few bits of TV in the UK, things were going well, but I was posting like topless photos of me in my underwear going like, oh, hit me a message for online programs. And it was only when I realized, like, listen, okay, this is great, but I need to educate people. I need to motivate people. I need to inspire people. And it was only when my content started becoming more educational and I started giving out more. At the end of the day, we all know, regardless of how much we know as individuals, we know something that other people don't in some area. For example, There could be, 10 people in a room, and as long as you know something that can help one person in that room, speak to that person. Try and help them, try and empower them, try and educate them. You don't have to know more than everyone. And I think the biggest issue with people in the fitness space is everyone's so afraid or terrified of being called out about something, or just because you don't know everything, like, doesn't mean you can't say something. And the truth is that nobody knows everything. And the more you know, the more you realize you don't know. So for me, I was like, okay, well, I'm a pretty educated guy. I've got a master's, I've got a PhD, not many people have those. I was like, well, there's no reason why I can't give out content. There's no reason why I can't try and educate and help other people. And it was only when I started doing that my business went through the roof, really. And, obviously I'm in a fortunate position now where, my online business is, upwards of $250,000 a year, working working really, really well. I've got a big team underneath me now, and I'm able to take a little bit of a back seat and focus on content creation and a lot of the educational aspect of things. And obviously, over the last 2 years in particular, there've been quite a number of clients. I know Joe Ballinger. I'm guessing potentially, right?
Yeah, Joe. Yeah.
Yeah, so Joe joined my mastermind in February. He was doing quite well. Could have been doing a lot better. And we've managed to grow his business from obviously personal training and online business from just under 30,000 a year to well upwards of 110, 120,000 a year in the space of 3 months. So
wow,
all I'm doing now is in the aspect of my mastermind is helping clients like Joe who have a great presence. They look great, and just give them more accountability too. I really enjoy that, to be honest. And I was talking to I don't know if you know Brian DaCosta. He's one of my mates over in the States, and he obviously. He's got an online fitness business, and he's helping people at business to business coaching, help them grow their businesses as well. And I asked him this question. I was like, which do you prefer? Do you prefer helping, PTs and online coaches grow their business, or do you help, the small number of clients that he still has, get in shape? And my answer is exactly the same. I love them both in different ways. I think, I suppose, as a fitness entrepreneur, I think we need to just delegate our time better. And, I still have, maybe 10 to 15 nutritional clients that I keep personally. And then the other, few hundred go to my team of coaches. And it just means that I have, enough time then to grow my business, add more value, continue, do amazing podcasts with with people like you, and network and collaborate and focus on the things that, that I want to do to grow the business by improving my physique, maybe competing next year. So dude, it's tough. It's absolutely tough. It's absolutely tough. And I suppose my advice to anyone out there who wants to get into the, the fitness space, or they're a PT in the fitness space, is, if you can move online and you can try and add something different online that nobody else is doing, then you're not really bound or limited to any gym or any facility or any area. That being said, though, I do a small number of one-to-one sessions, and I really enjoy them. Which do you prefer, or does it depend in terms of?
Yeah, there's something to be said, definitely, and I like what you said then about adding value, because that's the number one thing where, like I was doing exactly the same thing. I was posting half naked pictures in the past, and it DM me for online coaching. It's like, it doesn't really work like that. You've got to add value, and as you said, you've got to essentially help people and offer something. It doesn't even have to be necessarily something different, but as long as you're authentic and you're consistent with it, and you just pride yourself on pumping out that good content and having structure with it as well, which is something where I've really been improving on lately. But yeah, to answer your question, I still love the PT. There's something to be said about those interactions, right? So, there's nothing glamorous about, people say, you're an online coach, but when you're sat in front of a computer all the time and you're slouched over your iPhone, it's nothing, it can be tough at times. So as much as it is great to build an online business, as you said, I still really value those interactions that I have with my clients as a trainer. And there's no better feeling than actually, physically watching someone make amazing progress, and a lot of the time transforming someone's life is an incredible feeling. And obviously we do that online as well, but doing that face to face. And what I find as well, Chris, is one thing I'd like to mention as well is I feel like to be a really good, effective online trainer or nutrition advisor, or doing both as we do, you have to have, I'd say it does come in very handy to not even come in very handy. I think you have to have experience actually coaching people face to face.
Agree. Because, 100%.
Do you agree with that? Because I find there's a lot of people out there like, every Tom, Dick and Harry is an online coach now, right? Which, I'm not hating or nothing like that, but it's just unfortunate that I've dealt with a lot of people who have come to me because they've had really bad advice, and sometimes actually they've had a bit of damage done to them from cookie cutter, online kind of program plans. So
yeah, so I completely agree, and here's my thought process on that. I think number one, I think to be a good personal trainer in person, you need to have good people skills. And if you want to get into the online fitness space and you want to grow a business, you're still dealing with people. You're not in the fitness business. You're in the people business. You just happen to talk to them about fitness. And I feel like good personal trainers are good people. And I think to be good in anything, even if it's online, yes, you're, to be honest with you, even in the online space, you need to be even better with people because they don't have that connection with you. You need to bridge that gap even more, number one. Number two, I feel like physically, anatomically, being a personal trainer allows you to clearly understand the human body so much better than someone who's just come into online training because, they've got a decent pair of glutes or they happen to have, really good abs and they've got a decent following. And I think, thirdly, I think the issue that arises that you mentioned when people feel like they got a cookie cutter plan, or they probably didn't get the attention to detail that they would have liked. That screams to me that whoever that person was, and they're everywhere, is someone who could be an amazing personal trainer and amazing online coach. They could be, but they're overwhelmed. Exactly. They're overwhelmed. They have too many clients. They don't know how to systemize their clients. They're not able to give the attention to detail that the clients need. And how or why that happens is normally because people see dollar signs and they just see these clients as paying customers rather than lives that they have the ability to change. And if you're smart with business, you're smart with systems, you should be able to build a team around you who can support every single one of your clients. For example, with a lot of our client groups, we will have designated lectures or group calls whereby we go through specific slides on, this week just gone, we went through progressive slides, looking at the different forms of progressive overload. And we will go through, obviously, the theory, but then obviously we have a Q&A section afterwards where everyone gets a chance to speak and assess their thoughts. And that's bridging the gap in the online space that not a lot of people are doing, instead of just an email here or an email there. And I feel like to excel in the health and fitness space now, people say it's saturated. I don't think it is. I think it's saturated with a lot of mediocre trainers. I think if you stand out and you're willing to give above and beyond, I think the sky's the limit. And obviously, that's what's important. But yeah, dude, unfortunately, I think, there are people out there who are going to come to us and they've had a bad experience. The one thing that we try and do now with clients is, like yourself, anyone in the online fitness space, not everyone wants a coach for life. Some people want to coach for a year. Some people want to coach until it runs its course. And some people just want 8 weeks until they go, on holidays. So regardless of how long they're on or whether they can't afford financially, whether they have a budget, whether they're traveling, whether they want to do their own thing, whether they want to learn from someone else, every single client now, we get one of the coaches to fill out a questionnaire based on that client. Why the clients left, what were the client's biggest wins, what could you have done better to better serve that client that you didn't do, what did you learn about coaching that client, what were the client's wins, what were the things that you wish you could have helped that client that you didn't manage to do in that space of time. And the reason we do that is so that, one, it keeps the coach accountable, but it also means that we're feeding back information to the team, and we can see, okay, for example, if a lot of people are giving out the same response that, maybe I couldn't continue because the program was too expensive, we may readjust the pricing structure or find a way of offering a service that, we can scale so it's not as expensive. or, you know, maybe the client felt they didn't have a specific support in a specific area. I think that's really important. Obviously, when it's a one-man team and it was me by myself for a while, it's difficult to do that. But, you know, what I do and what I've been doing with Joe and a lot of the guys is put a team in place and show you how to do these systems so that, you know, at the end of the day, a happy client is a successful client, and a successful client, you know, is going to continue to see results. So I think client retention is key.
100%, yeah, and changing behaviors and stuff as well, because a lot of people, they want to go from, you know, it's human nature to want to go from kind of 0 to 100 and get results really fast. So a lot of people want to, you know, we want to get those results, and we don't really want to, the patience comes in, you know, is very important. But changing human behaviors, you know, to actually get results and long-term sustainable results, you know, people have to change certain things. And it has to be, if you ask me, that you know, by far the superior results I've had with people, whether that be personal training or online, is when we just make the small changes and we're consistent with those small changes. And once we've been consistent with one change, that could be anything as simple as increasing vegetable intake, and being consistent with that. Once we've nailed that one, and that's now a part of their lifestyle, boom, let's move on to the next thing. And that's how really, for the average person, you get those long-standing results. And, you know, protein intake's another one, Chris, right? So I find a lot of people are, you know, kind of grossly under-eating protein, a lot of people. So it's like, okay, let's bump that protein up now, which is going to, you know, help blunt your appetite and all the rest of it. And once they're consistent with that, then they start noticing, oh, okay, the results are coming, and then we change something else. But what I'm looking to tap into a bit more now is helping people prep for competitions. So that's what I'm going to be. Yeah. So I'm gonna see if I can, you know, get a few people on board with that as well now, because I've had a few people inquire and stuff like that. But as you mentioned, mate, scaling it, you know, obviously I still do some PT as well. So, and I just noticed a book you were reading called Scale as well, actually, which I took a screenshot of.
Dude,
but scaling is key, right?
Let me tell you a story about that book. So, I actually haven't. He's actually going to be on my podcast soon. So, probably 3 years ago, just before my business really took off, I had a client at that point for. So basically, let's bring it back a little bit. So for those out there who are offering online coaching, or if you're out there, you're aspiring online coach, what I did was I decided to increase my contact with some clients and give them a call every week rather than a normal check-in. So I decided to offer, and that was my ability, my way of scaling my business. So yes, I could charge more and I could have less clients and get more income for the time that I was putting in, but give them more value. So I created a Skype program where I would call them, which now a lot of people do. Long story short, one of the clients, obviously it was a higher end program. One of the clients joined, and we were working together for 6 months. He was doing really, really well. You know, I knew he was pretty successful. I never really asked what in. Turns out that it was the author of that book, Frank Bria. And long story short, we decided to work together in business and set together my mastermind, which we put, you know, in place. And during that period of time, he was traveling Europe. He was in the States at the time. He was traveling Europe for about 2 or 3 weeks. And he basically turned around to his company and said, you know, it's a business trip. And he said, I'll travel Europe for 2 to 3 weeks, you know, in terms of what he was doing. But he said, I want you to pay for my trainer to come with me. And they were like, okay, how much is that going to cost? And he said, well, he's going to fly first class with me everywhere, and he's going to stay in all the hotels that I'm going to stay in. So are you in or are you out? And they basically agreed. So long story short, I traveled. Yeah, man. Yeah. So I traveled Europe with him. This is 2017. I traveled Europe with him. And for 3 weeks, all I did was pick his brain on how to scale my business, how to grow, how to develop systems, how to put things in place. And that changed my business and changed my life. He's one of my best friends now. You know, we speak all the time. He's still now, I actually pay him now. And he is one of my business coaches, one of my business mentors. And if I have a question in terms of scaling or systems, you know, we bounce ideas. And yeah, so honestly, that book is incredible. and his knowledge is incredible. So that is
that book. Sorry, he recommended that book to you? Did he? Or
no, he wrote that book.
He wrote the book. Sorry, I missed that part. Wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
So the long story short is he did a PhD in mathematics and did a PhD in business, and he ended up working for software companies and banks. And on the side, he ended up creating online programs and basically got into the entrepreneurial space and wrote that book called Scale. So it's Scale: how to grow your business by working less. And he gave me that signed copy and said, this will come in useful. And in terms of scaling your business, that's absolutely, it's revolutionary. So I would highly recommend you get that. And I use a lot of those principles with a lot of my mastermind clients now. And obviously myself and Frank, we set up my mastermind. He helped me launch that back in 2017. I only took on a few what I said to myself was I wanted to wait until my fitness business had hit $500,000 a year before I started focusing on the business aspect of things, because I didn't want to be hopping around from one thing to the other, and I wanted to make sure that the fitness business was right. And even now, dude, I spend a vast majority of my day thinking of ways that I can improve the service that I give to all clients. And I think as entrepreneurs and you as an athlete, we're exactly the same. We're programmed to think, how can we improve? How can we do better? So dude, I would absolutely recommend you get that book. It is mega.
Awesome, mate. Awesome. I'll get on that. But so that's it. Just like, obviously, given the quality of service is essential, just to sum that up, right? Because anyone could, as you said, the people say is saturated, the fitness industry, but every industry is saturated now because of the day and age we live in with technology advancing so fast. Everything is saturated. It's just, how do you actually put your stamp on it, and how do you add more value and go above and beyond, I guess, Chris, isn't it?
Absolutely, dude. Absolutely. And, I think with you now prepping for your show, I think that's going to, that's really important as well for your clients to see that you're still pushing boundaries. You're still learning, you're still growing, you're still trying to, do new, like you said, about your sodium manipulation. You're still learning, you're not just giving up and just wheeling out information to everyone else.
Awesome. I'll pick your brain a little bit offline anyway, mate, now. So
yeah, mate.
I was going to ask you, whilst we're on that topic real quick, right? I was going to ask you about people getting in shape, and obviously, 6 out, I always say this stat, but roughly 6 out of 7 people will lose a significant amount of weight or body fat in their lifetime, only to put it all back on, and sometimes more. So losing body fat and getting in shape is one thing, but actually sustaining it and managing to maintain this and molding your lifestyle in a way where you're still a happy individual, you have a relatively balanced life, and you're actually managing to maintain this physique without having to think about it, right? That's the battle. So what are your kind of top tips, mate, for the audience in order to, they want to get in shape, but for them to maintain this physique as we do all year round? What are your top tips?
So firstly, and I know this is going to sound like a get out of jail free card, but if you have a non-restrictive cut, or you try, at the end of the day, you have to remember, right? Not everyone wants to, get on. I'm sure everyone wants to look as shredded as you and be on the cover of a magazine and etc. But the vast majority of people, that's not their goal. And I think if you can tap into, firstly, why someone wants to get lean. And assess, okay, you want to feel a little bit better. For example, one of my biggest wins was a client of mine who turned around to me and he said, his why was he wanted to be able to take his top off and go into the pool with his 2 daughters and not feel ashamed to be the only dad in the pool with a t-shirt on. And
oh, wow,
that was mind blowing. Like that, I don't care how many magazine covers I get on. His why is stronger than mine, always will be. And he doesn't need to restrict his food to make that happen. He just needs to move a little bit more, be a little bit more conscious about what he eats, enjoy the gym, and structure his food accordingly, not restrictive. Now, because I identified what is why really was, it's easier for you to tap in as a coach to go, okay, when things get tough, when, he's had a tough week, I'm like, okay, it's not easy, but this is your why. This is the reason we are doing this. Number one. And number two, and it kind of ties into number one, really, in doing so, try not to make it restrictive. If I turned around to him at any point and said, you need to eat this way for the rest of your life, he could have done it. Not the same meals every day, but I educated him on how to make changes, how to manipulate food, how to structure carbs, how, if he is going to have a cheat meal, when to have it, how to have it, maybe go low carb on rest days. That educational process empowers people to feel like they can function without you. Now, the biggest mistake that coaches make is that they restrict their clients so much and in a way form a manipulation tactic, whether they believe it or not, whereby they want the client to rely on them 110% so that they continue to pay them. Now, the truth is, if you're a good coach, you'll educate, empower, and motivate someone so much that they will never leave anyway.
Yeah, exactly. And that should be the end goal, because no one really should have to rely on a trainer or a coach for the rest of their lives. The ideal situation, as you said, is to see you for X amount of time. A good coach or a good trainer is actually a guide. That's what you are. Like, as kind of basic as that sounds, right? You have to be excellent at communicating. It doesn't matter, because you get a lot of kind of, people who have all sorts of degrees, but as we mentioned earlier, they haven't actually dealt with people. And that's such an important factor, to be able to communicate what you are saying to people in an effective way where they are actually going to adhere for the most part. Because obviously, as you mentioned, the why, like, why are you doing it? And that, I've got loads of examples I could use as well. But that is a game changer once you realize why you're doing it. And like you said, he was doing it for that reason, where with his kids, and he wanted to be at the pool, not the only one with a t-shirt on, so absolutely. That is a strong enough why the driver has to be right. Because a lot of people, what I'm trying to say is, a lot of people, without realizing it, are actually purely doing it based out of insecurities, to get in shape and to look better, is purely based on something they're not happy with, in terms of, a lot of people come to me are not happy with certain parts of their body, which is not always a bad thing. It's going to be the case for a lot of people, but it's just delving deeper into why you want it so much, right? So I think that's really important.
Yeah, dude, absolutely. And I think, it's for us, we've been there in some capacity, and the thing is, like, if your why is not a strong why, let's just say your why is, I want to lose like a stone, great. But why do you want to lose a stone? Unless you address, exactly. Unless you address the why within the why, then it's like, okay, well, why do you want to lose a stone? Because I just want to lose a stone. That's not a strong why. That's right. I want to lose a stone so that, I can ask the girl out that I've been wanting to ask out for 4 years, but I don't have the confidence to do so. Now that's a strong why. I want to lose a stone because I'm getting married in 6 months and I want to be in the best shape of my life for my husband on my wedding day. That's a strong why. And sometimes the client doesn't know what that why is, and it's up to us to identify and bring that to fruition and see, okay, here is why you want to lose that weight, and what would that mean to you? And obviously doing it in a sustainable fashion whereby you're not restricting them is absolutely key.
Because as you, when you, it's like, it's you can relate this to anything in life, but once you get there, a lot of the time, if it's purely based on looking better or an external motivator, if you like, and then you don't have an idea of what you want to do after that, it can sometimes be detrimental, right? So yeah, good point.
Absolutely. I was going to ask you, dude, for those out there. So we've got quite a few competing in a few shows coming up in September time. What advice would you give them competing for the first time? Now that you've competed a number of times in different federations, what would advice give to people out there who are competing for the first time or considering competing for the first time?
Okay, once again, it's what we were talking about, really. It's you really need to discover why you want to do it, because after you've done, I always say to people I prep, the few people I've prepped online for competitions, is I need to have a game plan in place as to after the competition, right? So that is just as important as the competition. It's like after the competition, you have a little bit of a game plan in terms of, maintaining your health, not rebounding, because it's going to be normal for you to rebound a bit. And obviously go and enjoy yourself and eat some food, drink some alcohol and whatnot. But what a lot of people do after they've competed is they book a holiday, go away, or even if they don't book a holiday, they will just stop training as much, so stop moving in general as much, eat 3 or 4 times the amount they were eating. And what happens then, obviously, is the body is like, oh, well, we better hold on to this. You've starved me for X amount of time, and you can. I've known people to put on absurd amount of weights. Like I know a guy. He put on like something like 15 kilos in a week. I know a girl who put on not far off 10 kilos. I think it was in like I think it was 9 days or something like that. And mainly just water retention, but body fat as well. You can put body fat on pretty fast after a show if you. If you're eating and going overboard with the indulgence, if you like, because it's a survival mechanism for the body. So that is a very important thing, is to have realize why you're doing it, right? And just to give you an example of a good reason why to do it is because I want to do it because I want to prove to myself that I can apply this amount of discipline to get up there and bring an incredible physique to the stage. And, potentially apply that discipline to other areas of my life. That discipline, that consistency, that patience. If you're really smart about it and you have the right why, as Chris just talked about, it can be life-changing for the better, because you can apply those things to other areas of your life, whether that's business, relationships, anything. And that is when you really realize that actually this could be a really beneficial thing for you. But just to sum it up, I guess my advice if you're doing your first show is to really take enjoyment out of the process. As tough as it might get, the process is all we have, folks, in any area of life. So like I said, as challenging as it gets when you're prepping for a show, embrace the process. Don't get too caught up on the progress. Obviously, you need to keep yourself in check and make sure you're going to bring your best package. But you need to just enjoy the process and embrace the character building that will happen leading up to you getting on stage, because that is the true game changer.
Yeah, absolutely, dude. That's awesome advice. I think. Well, maybe I'll take that advice if I compete next year. Who knows? I'm
going to try and take that advice myself now. It's easier said than done.
This is true. Dude, thank you so much for taking time out of your day. I know you're super, super busy. Obviously, I'm going to be looking forward to seeing how things go. For my audience, where can people find out more about you?
So I have a website. My friend and I have a fitness website launching soon, where we're going to have all our programs on there, lots of free guides and nutrition guides and whatnot, and we'll be offering our online coaching services. So that is going to be launched in a few weeks' time, hopefully. So that's going to be www.optimizeyourbody.com. But as I say, that's going to be in a few. I'm not sure when you're posting this, but on my social media, if you can go find me on Instagram at Martin Silva Fitness. And I'm also on Facebook as well. So Martin Silva Fitness, I believe it's just Martin Silva Fitness, yeah, on Facebook as well. So, I'm not to mention, sorry, to the listeners, go check out my podcast as well. I have similar values to Chris after listening to Chris talk here, and I think you'll get some great advice from my podcast, which is also Optimize Your Body. And that's pretty much it, bro.
Absolutely, yeah. So we're going to share this audio on both anyway. So for those of you guys who are listening, my end, head over, check out Martin's podcast, check out his prep leading up to this show. I'll be watching. I'll be excited, and fingers crossed, dude.
Thanks, brother. I really appreciate it. Yeah, make sure to my audience, you go check Chris out. What was your Instagram again, Chris?
Yeah, so for those of you guys, you can probably best reach me at Spearman Chris. Or drop me an email. but to be honest, the best thing to do is if you want to contact me about anything in particular, is to DM, because that will go straight to me. That is not delegated. That is me, will always be me. So that's the best place to catch me. And obviously, if you're listening to this on Martin's End, check out my podcast, the Shred with Science podcast. And yeah, dude, absolute pleasure. I must get a training session in when I'm in Australia next.
Yeah, definitely, mate. Make sure you let me know when you come in, and when I'm back over my neck of the woods over in the UK, if I swing by London, mate, we'll do a session there too.
Let's do it. Thank you, brother.
Thanks a lot, Chris. Appreciate your time.